Good evening and welcome to the 2021 Achates Philanthropy Foundation Symposium, All That's Been Revealed, curated by Javad Alipoor. I'm Caroline McCormick and I'm the chair of the Achates Philanthropy Foundation. And it's my real pleasure to be your host this evening for the final event in our series, The Lives of Artists. The Achates Philanthropy Foundation is an independent charity which supports the cultural sector through innovative approaches which support inclusion and the democratization of culture, and we're best known for the Achates Philanthropy Prize. This symposium is a philosophical reflection on the cultural sector, its purpose and methodologies, and our response to the need for spaces to explore our renewed understanding of the role of art in society, and to offer a space for discussion about the nature of that change and how it can come about. We'd really like to invite you as our audience to engage with the discussion as much as you can. So throughout tonight's event, the chat will be open for you to write your comments, and please do make sure you share them with everybody, not just the panelists as you do so. And we'd really welcome your questions, which you can submit in the Q&A box, which our speakers will answer towards the end of the event. And we really hope that the conversation will continue long after tonight's event is over. So we ask you to also join us in the conversation across social media using our hashtag APF Symposium. This symposium is presented in collaboration with our partners, to whom we're really grateful for supporting us at this really pressurized time for everyone. And they include Battersea Arts Centre, Beat Freaks, Manchester International Festival, the National Centre for Writing, the People's Orchestra, Theatre 503, Rifco Theatre, Royal Albert Memorial Museum and Art Gallery, Stage Text, and Union Chapel. All That's Been Revealed is sponsored by Achates, and we're really proud that the trustees of the foundation have made donations to make it possible for us to have live captions from Stage Text this evening, and thanks to Stage Text again. It seems really appropriate to have you with us during this Caption Awareness Week. So now it's over to our chair and curator, Javad Alipoor, who will introduce our brilliant panel. But before he does, let me just say a few words about Javad himself. Javad Alipoor is a British-Iranian, Manchester-based and Bradford-built artist, writer, and founding artistic director of the Javad Alipoor Company. The Javad Alipoor Company takes stories beyond the stage through powerful multi-platform creations that explore the intersection of politics and technology in the contemporary world. Javad was resident associate director at Sheffield Theatres from 2017 to 2018, associate director at Bradford's Theatre in the Mill from 2015 to 2017, and is an alumni of Arts Council England's Changemakers programme. Javad's plays include The Believers Are But Brothers and Rich Kids, A History of Shopping Malls in Tehran, and Maid of Mannheim. His writing on international politics, cultural policy and art have featured in The Guardian, The Independent and The Stage. And if you didn't catch Javad's keynote on Wednesday night, well, I think you really missed out. So do catch up with it on YouTube next week when it'll be freely available. So over to you, Javad.
Thank you, Caroline. It's a pleasure to be chairing the final discussion in this series, and thank you for that kind introduction. Today, this evening, in fact, we're talking about the title, The Lives of Artists, which is a discussion we were having when we were thinking about this conference around careers, artist development, where creativity lies in the sector and so on. But before we get into that, let me begin by introducing our panelists. So as people's names kind of appear to me, Andrew Glassford. Andrew, if you want to sort of say hello.
Hey everyone, nice to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you. Andrew Glassford is a freelance theatre technician and an environmental activist with Labour for a Green New Deal. Along with Red Co-op, he founded the Retrofit Get-In project, a scheme to train theatre workers into retrofitting homes. Andrew is also the producer for the Manchester Green New Deal podcast, a show dedicated to local and national stories around climate change and its mitigation. Darren Pritchard, if Darren wants to say hello.
Hey.
Thank you, is a native Mancunian. Darren is a director, producer, choreographer, and Vogue house mother. Darren has 20 years of experience in the fashion, theatre, television, and performing arts industries. In addition to his leadership in the infamous House of Ghetto and pioneering efforts in Black Pride Manchester, Darren is also the co-artistic director for the Manchester-based arts organisation, Black Gold Arts. And Cully Tiare, Cully, if I'm calling you, say hi.
Hello, hi everyone. Great to be here.
Thank you. Sorry, cutting you off, but Cully is Creative Director and CEO of Leeds 2023, the city's International Year of Culture. Having worked with prestigious arts organisations across the UK, Cully is renowned for her bold and groundbreaking work in the performing arts. Her extensive experience includes commissioning, producing, directing work nationally and internationally, developing and nurturing talent, and creating opportunities for those who may have little or no access to the arts. She's created a diverse range of work that spans communities, cultures, and performance styles, has directed large-scale plays, new plays, and made work in non-theatre spaces. Before taking up the position at Leeds 2023, she was Artistic Director and Chief Executive of National Theatre Wales. Her 30-year career also includes being the founding director of CAST in Doncaster, co-artistic director of the Leicester Haymarket Theatre, artistic director and CEO of Contact Manchester, Theatre Writing Partnership, and Red Ladder Theatre Company. She's a trustee of Manchester International Festival, the Art Foundation, and artistic advisor of Leeds-based theatre company Slumlow. She's also an honorary fellow of Central School of Speech and Drama and a fellow of the RSA. She was also the winner of the 2020 Cultural Icon Award in the inaugural Northern Asian Power List. Yeah, no, just to kick the discussion off today, really, certainly I think two of the things that really stuck out for me just as a provocation, and I know the panel are going to elucidate this much more than I will do briefly, when they speak more substantially than these remarks, but certainly two things that have been in my head since we've been unlocking are like about how we actually support the myriad kinds of creativity that we need to make the work that we do. The first thing is that I think, even like definitely before the pandemic, it always struck me working in theatres that, there was an awful lot of creativity and fight and spark in people who worked in our buildings and our companies who didn't necessarily do artistic jobs, whether they were technical jobs, whether they were marketing jobs, all that kind of stuff. And of course, we know that historically, gender and race to some degree determine who works in those so-called non-artistic jobs and who works in the artistic ones. I was thinking about that a little bit. And secondly, really, as we come out of the lockdowns and stuff, I think, we've had a lot of discussion about, I sort of feel like there's a bit of a disconnect between, on the one hand, the discussion around the need, how we all need to take care of each other and look after each other and all this kind of stuff, and how, capitalism seems to have arrived again full forcedly, and you need to get your shit together and start doing things. So with those opening remarks, I will hand over to Andrew. So if you'd like to sort of speak to us for the next 5 minutes, that would be great. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Javad. Yeah, just to kind of start, I think it's interesting just to kind of briefly lay out what happened to me last year as a backstage worker. So I'm a sound engineer, theatre technician, and I was about to take a show into Liverpool to go start in mid-March. My producer called me and said, come in, and then stop the whole thing. And then I didn't really work again until October, outside of doing the getting projects and stuff. And in that time, I was made redundant twice, which isn't really something you tend to hear from people. The fact that that can happen in just a short period of time. People that work in the arts, backstage, front of house. The precarity is kind of something I don't think you see a lot of, because our roles are hidden, inherently. We wear blacks, we're backstage. You're kind of more part of the infrastructure as opposed to on stage where people have, poetically, more of a stage to talk about stuff and can say what's going on in their lives. And also the types of people you might find backstage as well. I've found there is an element of people who are getting on with the job and will take whatever's coming on with them, and deal with any problems. And there's that kind of nature that's needed to deal with a lot of stuff in theatre, I find as well. We have really short turnarounds for shows, they're a budget which is always getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And that budget has to be eaten up in people's time instead. And I think, as you were saying in your opening remarks about how capitalism is coming back in its full force, is demonstrated in how theatres are normally run. backstage and people working in production will do 14, 15, 18-hour days to get a show on its feet for out to the public. I'm not sure if people have been following this, but there was the incident that happened earlier this month in the US with someone being killed on a film set because of very poor working conditions. And the similar stuff that's happening here in the UK in theatres and in film that's starting to come to light now, that as we see an expression of capitalism, that how do we get the most out of people while creating a product at the same time? And there's a lot of what Sarah Jaffe calls hope labor, I think, in what we do. There's lots of people working on projects thinking that they'll be able to get a better job in the future, when that's not always the case. There's a lot of work around people doing internships, for example. That's probably a bit more frequently seen in kind of, more service-based work. But I think it's very evident in what we do as well, especially on the fringe level. Like, I do a lot of fringe theatre, and the amount of shows that I've done for people, and, oh, can you do this for 20 quid? It's like, well, I will do, because I think the show has something in it. I want to help express that. But there's this balancing act that we play with between people's livelihoods and them wanting to create art. And I think that's a kind of conflict that we don't really have to have, but it is played out for the sake of profit somewhere else. I don't want to go full socialist right now. I'm sure that'll come out at some further point in the conversation. But my personal theory about all this is that I would prefer to see kind of power decentralized out of theatres and move to a more of a cooperative basis, much more like, Mondragon in Spain. I can't remember if they are, but I know Sling Low is maybe a co-op in Leeds. Colleagues work with them, but they kind of work, in a much more like everyone's in this together, and the pay scheme's a lot more, equitable because of that as well. Like, I think if we believed and trusted in the people that we work with in all departments and let them have more of a say, we'd probably have a lot less of these problems, and we'd understand that, like, the worth that everyone has in each department. Because as much as it is people on stage, like singing their hearts out, doing the best, like doing the greatest things that we do as humans, communicate, that's what art is, it's communication. We're all kind of cogs in a bigger machine, not in like a dystopian sense, but like every department is a vital part of what we do to make something happen. And I think kind of getting to that stage of going, okay, well, the person who's, doing the accounts is equally as valuable in this situation as someone who is, doing the fit up for the lights somewhere, or someone who's doing the drafting of the dresses or the other costumes. I think getting to a realization where we're all just not, it's not about like a hierarchy of who's seen the most, but it's a hierarchy of, well, ideally there'd be not much hierarchy. It'd be a lot more like, we're doing this thing together because we have a combined mission to get something done, in the way Marina Mazzucato states, which is like, moonshot or mission-based capitalism or corporation work. Maybe I've been gone a little bit out of my remit there, but that is 5 minutes right now.
It's very good of you. And there'll obviously be a lot more time to talk when we take some questions and that kind of stuff as well. Just to shout out again to the audience, like, if you guys are dropping questions into the chat, if you direct it to all panelists and attendees, then we'll be able to see what you're asking. That'd be great. Thank you. Moving next to Darren Pritchard. Darren.
Hey, well, yeah, just to tell a bit about what happened in lockdown. My life kind of like went 360, and I was busier in lockdown than I actually was when I wasn't in lockdown, because all of a sudden, the Black queer working class voice became prevalent in conversations about how theatre should be reshaped. And I think a little movement called the Black Lives Matter movement kind of put that right there in the forefront. So I was on panels, I was having discussions, I was looking at applications about commissions because they wanted and unfortunately, there's not many me's about, which is a testament to the way that the theatre and the structure there is. I'm a kind of like working class queer guy of colour from Manchester. But one of the things that I wanted to talk about was one of the projects that I was involved in that kind of like really excited me, which was the Strike a Light, Let Artists Be Artists. And what that was they asked the question, what would happen if you paid an artist for a year? And that was on a wage. So like a marketer or a technician in-house. And I was part of that kind of like selection process, helping to set it up in terms of like which artists. I interviewed artists, lots of applications. And during that, we had lots of big discussions about kind of theatre and infrastructure, everything from like burn it all down and start again, or how do we work in a capitalist kind of structure and we tweet it. And I always use one of my ghettoisms is don't hate the player, hate the game. And we're in a capitalist society, so how do you use that to your benefit? Because when you're from an intersectional kind of community, even though we make the most noise in terms of like we create the biggest movements, Stonewall, Black Lives Matter was a queer movement, that sometimes that there is people that just don't want to do that fight and need to survive. So we have to be kind of like very realistic in terms of like people need their wages to be paid. So that kind of really excited me. And that went from one full-time to two part-time posts as well, because a lot of that conversation come up about working mothers and full-time is not for everyone. And if you're on benefits and you need to work, and if you're working full-time and you're losing certain benefits, is it equal? So that kind of like really kind of like excited me, because it was a whole experiment of what would happen in a world where we actually kind of pay artists. And for me, coming from a working class background and from a certain culture, it's nice to be able to tell your mum and dad that you're actually getting paid, because when you're in a we talk about freelance artists, but a lot of that's by default. It's by the fact that we've not got the jobs there to go. And you talk to any Asian, African, Black, or thinking it's like, Mum, I'm going to be a freelance artist, is a very different conversation to go in. I'm on a job for 26k being an artist, because that's the way our parents work, kind of like culturally. So it was a kind of like interesting thing for me to kind of do. And you said that capitalism is like rearing its head. It's never gone. It's just insidious. It just hides itself and rears up and then goes back down. So that was really kind of like an interesting project to work on. And then we had a Manchester task force where we did kind of more smaller changes. And one of the small changes was we talked about how, because there was loads of commissions, we were like, how do artists actually apply for these commissions? Because it's a headache. And we designed a whole new structure, which the GMI, which was all the buildings in Manchester for once, got their heads together and started talking to one another instead of kind of like battling for audiences and artists. And then they kind of like, we had very open and frank conversations with them about how artists apply for these commissions that were coming out. So we designed a whole new system, and that was kind of like a small seed change as well. So that was kind of like, for me, working in an organization that's like burn it all down, to another one which is like, let's work within the structures that we've got to kind of make small changes. And at the moment, my biggest worry is for the fate of my community, especially because the statistic came out that 44% of all Black women have been lost in the industry across the arts, which was by Back to an Equity, and it was in the stage. And that's a very, very worrying figure, especially because my career has been shaped by women of colour, from my first dance teachers to all producers of work. But yeah, so that's all I've got to say on that, and I'll hand over back to you and over to Cully.
Thanks, Darren. Thank you. And as he said, over to Cully next. Thank you.
Thanks, and thanks, Darren, because there's lots of what Darren has said that I think echo with my own experience. And I guess there's something interesting about being an outsider all of your life in different ways. So, one's always known that the sector has a major challenge when it comes to social economic perspective and the certain kind of attitudes that kind of relate to the notions that, either sort of there's a philosophical kind of approach somewhere deep down which goes, oh, it's just a hobby, it's not serious work. Or the notion that if you want to be an artist, you have to suffer for your art, neither of which feel like they're appropriate, to be honest. And in some respects, we forget that every aspect of the creative act, whether you're a technician or whether you're the artistic director or a performer, is a creative act, and there's craft and skill and learning that's applied to that. And I think we have forgotten some of the value of that and the importance of that. So from my perspective, I guess my class, my gender, my race has always been part of the picture in terms of me having to navigate the context in which I work, and whether that's been running organizations or whether it's been the years of my career where I've been a freelancer. And it's really interesting to me that, you know, quite often I was subsidizing during my freelance periods, you know, I was often subsidizing my artistic practice by being paid a load more money for being a consultant on things. You know, I could work as a consultant and get paid significantly more than I could for directing or running a workshop or whatever. And that in terms of the economy is a really interesting proposition, that as a bureaucrat, there's more value in the industry than there is for the artist or the technician or the you know, our front of house staff, whatever. And I guess the pandemic merely revealed a lot about the ways in which the sector undervalues lots of people. And I would say that's also true of our audiences as well as our freelancers, you know, that there is a real discrepancy about how we value who comes to us and who engages with us, and what we say and actually what we do is really interesting, because we're very good at saying certain things, but our behaviour often reveals some darker truths to that. And I guess the other thing about, for me, about the pandemic is it shows up, if I'm being really, you know, really challenging, I would say it shows up the sort of mass failure of the imagination by our institutions to come together and look at how we might do things differently. And this was a unique opportunity, really, where everything is turned upside down, to be able to say, how could we do things differently? And it's also interesting to think about how furlough allowed so many to safeguard the bottom line, but it's only rare examples of where the challenge and the changed landscape was embraced as an opportunity to really reframe or reimagine or reconnect and review the role of the arts as a civic and a social responsibility. So there's been really great examples of great individual programs, but I think a real significant failure as a national concerted movement or effort to really come together and show what culture and artistic practice could do for our civic role, you know, both within communities and for the artistic players themselves. So I think that's a really interesting dynamic and an interesting question to pose ourselves, that on the one hand, we consider ourselves to be an imaginative art form or an industry that's creative, and yet we fail to be creative at a moment of crucial emergency, I suppose. And I think the other thing I would say is that there's also a real considerable sort of disconnect in the sector itself. So, you know, as a new organisation at Leeds 2023, it's been really interesting that, you know, one minute we're being told we're paying too much and we're pushing, you know, the salary strands too high, and therefore we should, you know, we're distorting the market. In the other, you know, on the other hand, there's the whole discussion about paying people properly. So, you know, actually, I think there's an issue there about how do you make change happen if you're always being pulled back to the baseline. So what I would sort of encourage you to think about, I guess, at this point is that you know, there is a need to have a greater sense of generosity across the sector in all aspects of how we're doing things, and a recognition of the nature of the ecology, and that every bit of it is as important as, you know, because if one aspect of it withers away, then it will affect the more successful areas at some point, you know. And we need to recognise it's going to be hard work to shift things, but we need to relinquish power in some places and accept responsibility in other areas. And sometimes this sort of them and us approach is really not about binary positions, but recognising that we're a networked ecology, you know, a living organism. And like the brain, if some parts of the neurosystem starts failing, then it will have an effect somewhere else. And you might not see it immediately, but ultimately, you know, unless you feed the roots and nurture the roots to be strong, the more visible aspects of our cultural offer won't be able to thrive. And so I think that's, for me, that's one of our failings as well, that we don't actually articulate the kind of complexity of the sector and how it's got an interconnectivity. that's vital and vibrant, and the freelancer context of that is an important part of that equation. I think I'm over my time, so I'll shut up, John.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It's super, what do you call it? From everyone, really. It felt like a really like generative, productive series of provocations there. So thank you, everyone. I've got some questions that I thought I might put to everyone on the panel. And then I know that people are backstage gathering together questions from the audience that are being sent in. So if people watching have more questions, do send them through. Yeah, so my first question is actually like just a brief comment as well. It's interesting that I think in different ways everyone's circled around this question of like, you know, being able to like look after people, especially freelancers, properly, because obviously like there's only a very specific kind of person who can afford to make work or be part of our industry if that career isn't sustainable. And then when I was doing looking at a little bit of research for this event, I remember the story someone told me that apparently Stanislavski's father was incredibly rich and he built him his first theatre that he worked in. And I was looking this up, and in the New York Times obituary from like whenever he died, there's this brilliant line where they describe him as an artist who never did anything for money, and I think that's a beautiful like double-edged sort of sword there, I think. But I suppose in terms of like proper questions, Darren, you spoke first of all about how on the one hand you spoke about many things, but on one point you were talking about how like Black Lives Matter changed the situation, that kind of external, like politics bigger than our sector changed what was going on for you. At the same time, when you were talking about, I think you said 44% of Black women or women of colour, you know, having left the industry. I was reading an article in The Guardian the other day that was saying that actually there's a whole, outside of our sector as well, there's a whole thing about kind of working mothers and how they've kind of been brutalized through this. So basically what I'm wondering, and my question to anyone who wants to answer this is like, you know, sometimes these big political shifts one way or another outside of our sector pull us one way or another, if you know what I mean, sometimes positively, sometimes negatively. I'm just wondering like if there's, you know, we're not in charge of those shifts and stuff like that, but what kind of we can do to engage with the best of politics outside our sector and to kind of pad ourselves against the worst of politics, if that makes sense as a question. Anyone?
Well, I guess I'll go kick off and then Darren can pick up, I guess. I mean, I think that, you know, certainly in my current role at Leeds 2023, I can't afford to be working in isolation just as an artist person, or indeed be blind to the political machinations that are happening in every area of life. And so, you know, one is always navigating some of that stuff, and sometimes it's about how you dial it up or dial it down in order to be clear about what you're trying to achieve, you know. And I think if your history is of being marginalized in some shape or form all your life, then that's just normal practice, isn't it? You know, you're constantly having to work out what you can say, how you can say it, and how you manage to get where you need to get to, and you know, and that journey is full of scars and difficulty. But I think that's where sometimes it's very hard to know how to build alliances and partnerships and strategic relationships beyond the sector, because I think sometimes our sector is so internally focused and so precious about itself that it forgets that in the real world, some of the things that people are tackling are real life and death issues. You know, it's not about the ease with which you can put a play on or not. And I guess that sounds very simplistic as a response, because of course it's really important that everything that people are that committed to all the jobs that they do. But at the same time, we have to find better ways to engage with the bigger context in which we're living, because part of great art comes from that conversation about the moment in time that we're trying to harness and how we speak to it. And, you know, the current crisis in all its formats, from climate right through to, geopolitics, is really important territory, and we need to be actively engaged in it somehow.
Thank you. Darren or Andrew, would you like to chip in?
Yeah, to on the back of what Cully was saying, unless you want to go, Darren. No, I'll go. Yeah, just a point to pick up on what you were saying about like the arts isn't life or death. And I find myself saying that every time I start a show. There's something about, like, we get so in our own heads when we're working on something. It's like, if the show goes badly, doesn't really matter, in the long run. I'm not going to lose a leg unless it goes really, really badly. But how to get people back into what we're doing, I think it's about trying to make theatres not like silos and not seeing them as temples or places that people go to and have a certain experience. It's about them being in their communities and being engaged. And I know that can feel like a bit of an easy answer sometimes, like the amount of times people spend on their arts council, application forms and trying to work out what that community engagement is going to be. And some of it is pretty lackluster because it's just like, well, how do we do this? Because it's always seen as an addition as opposed to a fundamental part of what's happening. So I feel like it's about like situating theatres and the arts in their place sometimes and going, okay, well, we're in the centre of Manchester. Manchester has, I think it has the most languages in any European city that is still alive. It has languages that are dead in other places than the original places. Like, why aren't we tapping into those communities and bringing people in and trying to get people into the theatres and in those background roles and in front of house roles and places where they can become part of, or their culture can interact with theatre culture and build something new. Like, I know it's all very easy to say. It's all quite hard to do. Like, it's essentially organising, which is everything we have to do really to make the world a better place.
Thank you. Darren, would you like to come in?
Yeah, the arts and politics. Being a Vogue house mother, without the politics and reaction to the world outside of their politics, there would be no Vogue scene. There would be no breakdance scene. Theatre at one time was highly political and was, when you looked at what was being said, it was all in reaction to being marginalised and having something to say and using your creative voice to say that. So I actually think that that's lessened. And when you're from a marginalised community and you want something to say, you generally do say it through song, through dance, through other means of expression. And I think you can't, politics is good and bad and ugly, and that should be reflected in theatre. It should be, and then if we did take notice to what's happening in politics at the moment, we would have a lot more working class people in there, because it would be addressing the unemployment issue. It would be addressing the fact that people can't feed their kids, and it would be looking at where that money can be made to help those big political things that are actually happening in the real, if you call it the real world, and what issues kind of take, and also the work that would be produced as well. And people are always talking about diversifying audiences, and that's a political statement in itself. And it's just like, to get people through the door and to get those audiences, you have to understand where they're coming from politically, socially, mentally, and as people as a whole. So yeah, I think politics and theatre is intrinsics, and the fact that we're having this conversation is the fact that there's been political decisions, and both monetary, economically, and personally, on how that money's accessed and trickled down to people as well. So I think we have to take it all. We have to take politics into our into theatre and not be scared of it. And I think because we've gone in a bit more where a lot of the money is coming from, we've been very scared to be a bit more political, brave and imaginative, because everybody's scared of losing their money if they say something wrong.
These were like super interesting points. I'm aware that we started to get a whole bunch of questions in from the audience. So, and I've got I had a couple of questions of my own, but what I might try and do is bring together the ones that feel like they're the similar sort of thing and just throw them at you guys, if that's all right. So yeah, one question was, can you guys think of any practical ways in which we might be able to sort of work towards rebalancing power and resource across that cultural ecology, both within institutions and outside, within institutions and across institutions?
Well, I guess, like I said, like there's no easy answer for it, and I feel like when people ask, this isn't to go at the question asker, like asking for a practical solution always feels like it's asking for a simple answer. I think we have to kind of organize politically inside our theatre spaces, inside our art spaces, you know, like realize those power dynamics that are at play. I think having stronger unions or more political unions would help a lot. Like, I'm a member of BEC2. BEC2 can't be political because it's part of the wider Prospect union group, which has civil servants in and people who work in nuclear energy. So like, that's great for them, but like, I don't know how you do organizing without having a political intent at the same time. It does feel, and I'm probably going to get some crap for this, and people at BEC2, that we're in a very nice like gift card club where we get 15% off at like Waterstones every 2.5 months. I think it's about like, you know, having that intent and saying, okay, we're not being treated very well, neither are you, and building solidarity. And that comes in small conversations. It comes in just realizing and exploring how people are treating the way where you work, and not being divided up into departments, and not going, well, I don't speak to the people at that theatre because, you know, of some tribal, I don't know, like proclivity we might have because of the competition. It's like, we're all doing the same thing. Why can't we push in the same direction? But, you know, small steps.
Thank you. Anyone else want to come in on that? Or I could go back to my question bag and pull another one out. I'm tempted to mime that just off screen, but you know, we've not got time, unfortunately, and I haven't rehearsed it. So yeah, the next question is, you know, obviously in the wake of these absolutely gendered and absolutely racialized mass redundancies and kind of things that we've seen over the course of the pandemic and coming out of it, not only freelancers, but also front of house and technical staff and people working in administrative jobs. What infrastructural changes would you all like to see to kind of stop that undervaluing of people? I suppose what you know, just some examples might be what you think, you know, what you think a job that feels like people that feels like it kind of like care is being taken of people, you know, what that might look like, what kind of like well-being might look like, what wage levels might look like, what progression might look like, all that kind of thing. I don't know if anyone's got any thoughts on that.
Well, I guess one of the things I would think about is, you know, for some of our institutions and for those who are NPO, you know, to look at, excuse me, to look at, you know, what is the priority and where do we, if we want to make a shift, what are the changes that one can make? Excuse me. And some of that is about, you know, there's always been a bit of a historic thing, which is in order to solve something, we need more money. Excuse me. But sometimes it's about reorganizing internally and about prioritizing what you really value. And if nothing else, you know, one of the most significant things that has come through the pandemic is that our community engagement teams and people who have, you know, working in that kind of grassroots approach with their practice has in some cases been seen for the value they engender because of the work that became more visible. And so I don't think that's I think that's about mindset and ethos, isn't it? It's about what is the core purpose and what is the value of the people you have and how you utilize them. That's much more of a values-driven approach rather than a bottom line. How much money can we make out of this, and how much money do we need to raise out of that? It's you know, funding is a dynamic model, and you can respond to that in dynamic and interesting ways. And we just need to be we need to be clever at how we manage how we manage the resource we have. And I think working in alliances is a really important thing, you know, and we don't do that enough. There's always sometimes a you know, mismatch around why we come together to do something in a co-production or a collaboration, or the power bases on which those decisions are made. And of course, some of that is historical, isn't it? Some of it is to do with the fact that there's been a period where we have been pitched against each other for resource, and therefore the desire to be open and generous is harder, or it has been harder for a long time. And I think we just need to open that up a bit. And also, if we're genuine about giving freelancers a voice, in the same way that we keep saying we're wanting to diversify our workforce, or by saying we want to diversify our audiences, then you have to put in the hard graft to do that. You can't just say the words. You do have to kind of build those relationships and build the trust and get out there. And, you know, why would I want to come into a building if it doesn't feel that it serves me? You know, when we were at CAST, you know, part of our ambition to make it a sort of cultural living room for the town was to be really physically in conversations with people who walked in, and for us to go into communities and build those relationships so that we knew who you were and who was coming in. And, you know, that's small stuff, but it's really important stuff, right? So I think that it's about a values-driven agenda, rather than always thinking that the only answer is either artistic excellence, which is something over there, and or the sort of bottom line, or the kind of economic value of something. There is more in value to be calculated than just how much you earned on the box office.
Yeah, no, thank you. Darren or Andrew, is there anything you got to say about that, or shall I move on to another question? Yeah, I'll do that, because Colleen, one thing you were talking about there sort of reminded me of triggered thought about what you were talking about earlier, which is triggered a question I like to throw to everyone, really, which is, so everything is up in flux at the minute, whether we pretend it is or not, to the extent that, Colleen, you spoke about how, you said when you were talking about the need to work together and think about what the sector is entirely in terms of how it supports people and that kind of stuff. And you spoke about, the places that are doing not so well and the places that are doing better. Like, the elephant in the room is that, the places that are doing not so well, or the places that are doing better, are not at all identical with the main house stuff where the shiny things happen. The elephant in the room is shows are shutting early in the West End. People are, it's a macroeconomic problem, but your upper middle class audience, do you know what I mean, seems more keen on them. Upper middle class audience seems more keen on putting their, the money that they've got saved up into an extension to their kitchen at the minute than they do on theatre or opera tickets or whatever. So with that idea that everything's kind of up in flux at the minute, however much we admit it or not, if you know what I mean, the question is, are there any models that either, and we can be as kind of utopian or crazy about this as we like, or just provocative or whatever, are there any models from other countries, cultures, economies, organizations, which you think are interesting, get aspects right, or that you would just like people, throw into people to find a little bit more about? I suppose an interesting point, caveat to that would be to say, because Darren spoke about how, regional theatre used to be more on it. It doesn't have to be from right now either. Let's say it can be from another country, this country, or another time. Floor is yours, you three. I feel like these questions, we're getting some troublesome questions from the audience. But yeah, if anyone wants to speak to that, please feel free.
I feel like I'm doing a lot of talking, but I'm happy to kind of go. A couple of things I would say is that, one of the, I think Andrew talked about, sort of community, and Darren talked about political theatre and its roots. I mean, I started in a company that's roots go back to 1968. You know, they gave me my first opportunity, and they, when I was working with them, we were known as a socialist feminist theatre company, and we weren't afraid to kind of talk about it in those ways. But that engagement of taking work into spaces and places, which was about going to that, you know, almost thinking about it as a that, you know, you were being invited to other places, that you weren't, you know, you were at the behest of those communities, and that, you know, doing work with some of those young people, and if they didn't like it, they'd walk out. You know, so actually there was a real sort of dynamic between the conversation and why that conversation was important. And sort of, I don't know the history of British theatre in perhaps the way I should, because I've not grown up with it, but this notion that we sit quietly and passively and can't actively engage in that dynamic conversation is really interesting. And of course, you then go and see, you know, occasionally you might see shows like Barbershop Chronicles, where, you know, a community is kind of represented in a way they've never seen themselves, and the joyful exchange of the public watching it makes a huge difference. So that tells you something about when the offer is right and the relationship is right, then that model can really work. And I mean, and actually you only have to think about some of the free events that happen in public spaces and how many people turn up to see them. And that's in this country, and, you know, street theatre in India or whatever it is, that the public are not shy of not wanting to engage, but we're doing something that sets a barrier, I think, in terms of people feeling they can walk into certain spaces and places to be able to see it. So actually, I think there's something interesting to learn from some of our outdoor public realm work and what that does in terms of democratization, because it's not about money, it's not about locale, it's about a choice that you can make, and that engagement is very powerful. So I wonder what that means and what learning there can be from that.
Yeah, just to pick up on that, I think there just needs to be a whole definition of what art is and who's it from and who's seeing it, because there's this myth that people are engaging, or they are. Our Vogue events, we are booked. We are getting audiences, and it's like, and we had to fight to get money. We had to get 500 people in an audience before we even got looked at. Yeah, and we actually got told we're thinking about diversifying our funding pots years ago when we had that many people. So what needs to happen is, I think, an awakening needs to happen. And like Cully says, you go to a festival and I'm being brought in as artists to provide the colour, the flair. So it's about what we see, who we see as artists, what we see as artists, and where the money is spent. What's happening is the money is spent on a certain particular ilk of people, and then that is now not trendy, or it's no longer in the audience. Audiences are failing. And to be real, there was studies years ago that the arts of colour and people of colour and what they called urban, they're the rising audiences. And if you believe in institutional racism, my big thing goes, if you've done the studies and you've done all of that, your money would do this. But it will never happen because the powers that be will not let that happen. So the studies have been there. There is people engaging in arts. It's where the arts are, who is seeing those arts, and which type of artists are being funded. And all this stuff about not working together. Freelancers have been working together for years and getting on. And the freelancers are because I'm doing a whole big thing. I'm like, I work a lot in music, and I was like, they've been what they're now calling co-collaboration. I was just like, it's just Misty working with some Asian tablas and putting it on her album. That's a co-creation. It's me I did a project with a technician and we created a piece together. We've been doing that for years and years. And what happens is the institutions take the big questions and they go, oh, and half the time I'm blind and going, as freelancers, we've been doing this for years. We've been putting work in different spaces, and we have to be really agile. And I think the closest model that I've seen was kind of like was like the National Theatre Wales, where they had a whole of Wales as a playground. They didn't have a building. Whether that worked or it didn't, I was like, they had the whole of Wales as a playground rather than a building that people aren't going into. And like, the only time people would see my work is when I did an outside tour. It was the only people I got on my council to say who went to local park to see a piece that was funded, and they engaged in it and they loved it, and we had audiences come back. So I think there's a lot of kind of like demystification that needs to go on within the arts, and we just really need to take a real look at ourselves and just go, there is money there, because everyone's like, there's no money, there's no money, there's no money. There's no money maybe to keep your lights on, but if you've transferred that money to freelance artists or somebody else, art is always going to be kind of like created. So it was just kind of like off the back of that. And I don't think anywhere in the world is kind of like doing right or wrong, or because people always go and look up, they go, oh, look at the France where you get the stipends and you get this and you get that, but they've got their own problems as well. It's like artists like me wouldn't be as put up there as I would be in the UK. So yeah, just to ride off the back of colours there.
Oh, thank you. That was like, that was some super interesting stuff. Andrew, is there anything you'd like to throw in about that, just as a sort of closing remark?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with what Darren and Cole were saying. I guess, like, if I'm going to be a Marxist about it, it's all about time. Like, capitalism isn't really about money, it's about how time is used. You know, how much your time is associated with a job, with your production. And I think it's about reducing the amount of effort or time needed people to engage with art. That's why streaming and like YouTube and stuff is so everywhere, because you can get to it really easily. So what, you know, Darren was doing, like taking shows into parks and stuff and into council estates, is like reducing that time, reducing the amount of effort it takes people to get involved with stuff. And he's also right about, you know, like, art always comes back out of the earth once it's been crushed down somewhere else. Like, you know, you can't stop people trying to communicate. That's what we're best at. So it's just finding whatever that is and trying to help it grow. I know that's a bit of a nebulous statement, but like, just finding something that is interesting and new and going, well, we've got some, you know, institutional knowledge because we've been making theatre for 30 years. So let's help you make this where you are now. Like, that's how to support, I think, getting more communities of colour and the working class back into theatre. Because, you know, historically, theatres were in working class communities, like Oldham, for example, big working class town. The Oldham Coliseum's been there for like 100, I think it's like 110 years or something, and was massive for years and years and years. And its panto now still draws people in like once a year from all the surrounding area, and kind of keeps that alive in a way. And it's about, yeah, I think it's about place and time, to put it philosophically.
Thank you. It's a really good, great philosophical note to end on. And I feel like we've had a whole bunch of ways in which, over the past hour, we've talked about how, you know, there's a whole value system that needs overhauling and spinning back. But it's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you all. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Javad. And thank you all for a really tremendous event this evening, which has sought to find solutions, practical solutions to the unspoken but very real challenges which we're all facing. And I hope that the symposium over the week, led by Javad, has really started a conversation that we can all continue across social media, but as you've all said, across the ecosystem, which is our industry. I think it's such an important point to take from tonight. So, on behalf of the Achates Philanthropy Foundation, thank you to Andrew, to Cully, to Darren, and to you, Javad, for your brilliant insights. And thank you all, our audience, for joining us and for your great questions tonight. Obviously, we could have gone on for some time, but, you know, we really appreciate your contribution. And whilst tonight is sadly our final event for this year's symposium, as I mentioned at the beginning, all events will be freely available on YouTube. So do share them and do let people know if you found something brilliant across the week that you want to explore further. So that just leaves me to say thank you to our partners, to Stage Text for our live captions, to Achates, and most of all to you, Javad, for curating this year's symposium. It's been a revelation. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Good night, everyone.